Hi, folks. Ryan Honeyman here from Lyft Economy. Many folks have come to us over the last 10 years and asked, how do I get more involved in creating an economy that works for the benefit of all life? They also ask, what skills and experiences do I need to help make this transition? So, 3 years ago, we created something called the Next Economy MBA to help address this and similar questions. Lyft Economy's Next Economy MBA is an online course that's designed for entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, students, recent graduates, employees, and folks who want to learn more about transformational next economy strategies and businesses. Join the growing alumni network of nearly 250 alumni who've gone through this program and learned essential skills and hopefully built lifelong relationships for catalyzing businesses in the emergent and regenerative economy. So we encourage you to check out our course. You can go to lyfteconomy.com/MBA. The next course, Cohort 7, starts on September 21st, 2021. So once again, go to www.lyfteconomy.com/MBA. And now, on with the show. Welcome to Next Economy Now. The goal of this podcast series is to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, equitable, democratic, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy. Kenyatta, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So for folks who don't know, what is Cascade Engineering?
Cascade Engineering is a family-held corporation that was started in 1973 that focuses on sustainable manufacturing. And our sweet spot is large injection molded products. So we're in a couple different industries. We're in trash and waste. We're in automotive. We're in truck and bus. And we're in commercial as well.
Great. And so one question, as a certified B Corporation, I know you guys are the largest manufacturing B Corp. How does the industry of large scale plastic injection, how does that fit into the B Corp movement? Do you ever have pushback from people like saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be a B Corp," or what do people say about that?
You know what? We don't get much pushback on from being in manufacturing or being in plastics. I think people understand that we believe in the triple bottom line philosophy, meaning that we believe that there are three different capitals when discussing and understanding a business, and the capitals are the people, the planet, and the profit. We understand that a lot of companies think that money is the most important thing, but at Cascade Engineering, we don't believe that. We believe we have an obligation to our shareholders to make a profit, but we also believe that the people and the planet are equally important to making money.
Great. And I saw, I did a little background research. I'm particularly interested in some of the sub sort of businesses, such as the renewable energy work, your RFID work, and also the water filtration business. Could you tell folks a little bit about some of those businesses that you're involved with?
Yeah, so we've got 9 different businesses. For example, with the RFID, the reason we got into that business is because, as I indicated, we make large, for example, trash cans. And as we try to be more sustainable and work with cities, for example, in Grand Rapids, they wanted to have a smart can so that now in the city of Grand Rapids, you pay for your trash to be hauled away and you have free recycling. In order to make that work, we had to make our cans smart so that the city knows when a trash can has been picked up, and it also knows when its recycling has been picked up. So in my case, for example, I downsized my trash can from a 96 gallon to a 64 gallon, and I got 2 recycling containers. And now I recycle more than I throw away. So that's a way, as a citizen of Grand Rapids, I can have a positive impact on our community. And those are the type of things that Cascade Engineering really gets excited about. We talked about the filters. And so we have a partnership with an organization where we mold and create filters for the third world. We all know that one of the leading causes of death in third world countries is lack of safe water. So we have a partnership where we're able to produce bio sand filters and provide those to countries like Honduras and Haiti and Nicaragua. And I've been all over the world helping installing those and seeing the positive impact, once again, a plastic manufacturer can have in the world.
Great. Yeah, the RFID thing is particularly interesting. So is sort of pay as you do you pay more for the waste, and does that sort of incentivize folks to downgrade the amount of waste they throw out?
Yes, exactly. So the larger your trash can, the more you pay. And now the city can go to your house. It's sort of cool. They can go to your house and they pick up that trash can. They know how much is in your account. And if your account is at zero, they'll actually put that trash can back down. By the same time, when a person is throwing less of their recyclable goods in the trash and putting it in recycling, the city is able to make a profit off that because they have a recycling center where they can sell the recyclable products.
Got it. And so, what's your story? How did you, when someone comes up to you and says, Kenyatta, what do you do at Cascade Engineering? How do you respond?
You know what? I say that I have one of the best jobs on earth. There's something different every day. So I'm executive vice president, and I'm in charge of a lot of our social programs, but I'm also in charge of HR and IT and marketing and legal. And I've got a couple of different front end businesses that I work with as well. So every day it's something I'm different. I started off as a lawyer, and as an attorney, I would realize that I was dealing with somebody's worst nightmare every day, and I wanted to get into a private practice where I could sort of help build an organization where we help to have a positive impact on people, rather than worrying about every legal ramification of every action that a company could make. And so during this search, I happened to run into Fred Keller, who was the president and founder at the time. And we made a great connection. And now I work for an organization that focuses on people, it focuses on the planet. And I'm able to help people have positive impacts in our community. And that's why I'm really excited to work at Cascade Engineering.
Great. Can you tell folks a little bit about Fred? Because I think he's, obviously a very important figure at Cascade, and, maybe just who is he and some of the accomplishments he's had over the years?
Yeah, Fred's an amazing leader. He started this company back in 1973, and he wanted to have an organization that treated people with dignity and respect, and still was able to be sustainable and be profitable. I think 40 some odd years later, he's been able to do that. Some of the unique things about Cascade Engineering that Fred has been able to start and see develop into great programs are, for example, the Welfare to Career program, where at Cascade Engineering, we're able to take individuals that have experienced generational poverty, provide them employment opportunities, and help them get off welfare. That was a program where Fred was able to work with the state and develop relationships where we actually have a social worker a social worker from the state of Michigan that actually sits at our office. And so an individual that is on welfare, rather than trying to figure out how I'm going to get down to see my social worker, they're able to take a break and come over to our corporate building and actually talk to a person that actually works for the state. About a month ago, I was able to go down to Washington and testify in front of the Ways and Means Committee of the U.S. Congress and talk about this program. Right now in D.C., there's a movement to try to help people get off on welfare. And one of the things that they've seen our success and understand that employers can have a positive impact on communities. And so they're trying to figure out how can we replicate what Cascade has done in Western Michigan.
Yeah, it's incredibly impressive. I'm really glad you mentioned this program, because I think for a lot of social enterprises, or many businesses in general, but particularly social enterprises, potentially people listening to this podcast, they have this desire to help and to hire, increase diversity and inclusion at their company, but in particular, folks with a criminal record or former homelessness or on welfare, I don't think they really know. Many social enterprises just don't know what to do, and I really think the program you have there has just laid some incredible foundations for other businesses to replicate.
So, as a triple bottom line company and a B Corp, I'm a certified B Corp. We believe that we have an obligation to our community to help reduce barriers to employment. And you mentioned one of those barriers to employment is criminal background. So another thing that Fred has been able to do is introduce to our community the concept of being open and accepting returning citizens. So we have thousands of people that come back to our communities every year from either jail or prison. And in many situations, what employers do is that they have an application where if you mark, I have a felony, or some people even ask, have you ever been arrested or do you have a criminal background at all? They take those applications and they throw them away. And one thing we've done at Cascade Engineering is that we have moved the box, meaning that we don't ask that question on the initial application. We ask that question only if we decided that we liked a candidate and that they're qualified for the position. And so we found that over the years that there's no real difference in the general population from those individuals who have criminal backgrounds and those individuals who don't have criminal backgrounds. If you create a culture that is caring and nurturing, and you set clear expectations, and you provide individuals an opportunity. So just like the Welfare to Career program, our reentry work has found that when you give employees that have barriers opportunities to be successful, they often will help us break down those barriers and have long-term careers with Cascade Engineering.
Yeah, I think, I really would love to sort of dive into this topic a little bit because I think that many companies would love to do this, but they really don't know what to do. So sort of like, could you perhaps, because I know Fred initially had a desire to move in this direction, sort of hiring formerly homeless or formerly incarcerated or folks with a criminal record in the 1990s. But could you, I know there was some initial setbacks, and what did he learn? Some of those key pieces that need to be in place, sort of at the early end of the program.
I think that first of all, part of our DNA is that we're not afraid to fail, and if you're having programs that deal with issues of poverty or reentry or racism or whatever it is, and you stop when you first have difficulty, you first have a mistake, these programs will die on the vine quite quickly. So the fact that we're able to run into some problems, run into some difficulties, and then be able to come back and try the program again has allowed us to be successful. For example, I work for the career program. We started in the early 1990s. And then we found that when we brought the social worker on, we were able to continue to grow the program. But there are many occasions where we hired groups of people and they just didn't make it at Cascade. And so one of the things we had to do in that situation was we had to look at ourselves too. You know what? Originally we thought that if you just gave somebody a job, that's all you had to do. And then we realized that we had to train our managers. We had to create an environment where people felt welcomed. And if you brought people in and you didn't treat them very well, they wouldn't stay. And so we weren't surprised that people were leaving. But once we did things, for example, we did poverty simulations. We did training with our supervisors. We looked at our attendance policies. And these things were able to, A, let our employees know that they were welcome, we wanted them here, and B, it trained our supervisors and gave them the tools to be successful when dealing with this different population.
Yeah, I love the poverty simulation where I think it was some supervisors were initially skeptical, and then Fred had them. What was the actual thing that Fred had them do to simulate poverty?
Well, actually, we took all of our leaders, and it's almost imagine like a Monopoly type game where you had to feed your family, get to work, pay all your bills with only X amount of dollars. And so you had to make some difficult situations about, what, are you going to pay your car note or are you going to pay your rent? How do you get food on the table for that day? And so, out of that, some of our supervisors thought, well, My assumptions were that this group was just lazy, that they weren't trying very hard. And even though it's only some simulation, it can open your eyes a bit so that you think, well, maybe some of the characteristics I'm placing on these people aren't fair. And once we have people thinking about, you know what, let me be fair and treat these people as if I wanted to be treated, the whole situation at Cascade Engineering changed. Our eyes were opened a little bit. And once you begin to understand that this is a difficult situation, it's not all necessarily from their own doing, you're able to hopefully provide that opportunity to those individuals.
Right. Some businesses listening might feel, do you see it this sort of model for helping chronically underemployed populations get work and stay at work? Do you feel that it's particularly applicable to manufacturing? For example, if you're a service company, do you see any barriers, or do you think that it could still work on a sort of B2B instead of a B2C company? I'm just interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think first of all, we have to understand that right now in Western Michigan, particularly, we're in a war for talent. That means that when unemployment gets to be below 2%, et cetera, if you don't begin turning over every rock, you might not have the talent to run your business. And so if we choose to deny this population an opportunity for employment, we might not be able to be successful ourselves. And just let me tell you a quick story. We have an individual who started working for us through a program called 3022, and that's 30 companies were trying to hire 2 people with criminal backgrounds and track them for 2 years. And the logic behind that was we wanted employers to understand that you can have a successful program. And so a lot of people they were just afraid to try. And this is sort of like a baby step. Could you just try hiring 2 people? And there's an individual, his name is Joe Gomez. And he came through us through the program. He started off as an hourly employee. Then he was able to advance, and he ended up working in our lean department. And he did a great job there. And then he advanced again, and now he's in our HR department. He's an example of an individual that other employees had refused to hire. And he is an excellent employee. He is a person that contributes significantly to this company. And had we had another policy, we would not have given him the opportunity. We would have lost out on that. And so that would have been a lose-lose for him, his family, our community. And when we talk about this, we've asked him, so what would you have done if you didn't get a job at Cascade Engineering? And he says, I just don't know. And that's unfortunate that often when people aren't able to get employment, they may return to some previous behaviors that may have got them in trouble in the first place. And so we have a responsibility that after a person has served his or her time, to give him an opportunity to reintegrate back into our society, or there's going to be they're going to be second-class citizens forever, and that's not what their penalty was about. And so with Cascade Engineering, we're fortunate in the sense that because we're manufacturing, we have very few limitations on who we can hire. There may be a situation that if you work for a school or a retirement home or a financial institution, there are certain positions that you can't hire. But nevertheless, most organizations can hire individuals. And I think you have to do your appropriate vetting. And so at Cascade Engineering, there's numerous questions that we ask. We ask, what was your crime and how long ago was it? What kind of partners do you have? For example, we work with an organization here called Hope Network, and they are an organization that provides support to individuals who have criminal backgrounds, so that when they're not at work, hopefully we're providing support at work, and when they're not at work, Hope Network is providing hope and support for these individuals to make sure that they can be successful. So we ask the appropriate questions, and we try to support these individuals. And I think most organizations, given the appropriate resources or pointing them to the right direction of how to get the appropriate resources, can help an individual with a criminal background find employment.
Yeah. And how many folks work at Cascade Engineering now?
We've got about 1,600 people worldwide. About 600 are here in Grand Rapids, and then the rest are throughout the United States and throughout Europe.
And what percentage of those folks have participated in one of the programs you just mentioned, like Welfare to Career?
You know what? I have no idea actually at all. I mean, when we combine the programs together, one thing we try to do at Cascade Engineering is that we allow people to tell their own stories. If they have a criminal background, we allow them to tell it. Their own welfare, we allow them to tell it. So I don't keep those numbers at the tip of my tongue. We can share those numbers, but I just don't have them right in front of me right now.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. I noticed some of the reading previous to the interview that Fred was talking about how, initially there was perhaps a monthly turnover rate of 40%, but it went down to 3%. I think it's even lower now. I think it's like 1.5 to 1% or something. What have you noticed? Folks with a particular criminal history or formerly homeless, do they have a higher turnover rate than quote unquote normal, I guess, folks? Or
I think the number you're referencing was our Welfare to Career program, and we're actually below 2%. And the funny thing about it is that we started doing to all of our employees what we were doing with our Welfare to Career program because it was so successful. We're able to hopefully create a culture and do training that allows all of our employees to have the same benefit of that Welfare to Career. And it's sort of strange that we talk about a Welfare to Career program. That retention is less than our normal retention. We've got pretty good retention as an organization, but having being 99, 98% monthly retention for a group of people is pretty darn good. And so we're pretty excited about that. And I think that's some of the myth out there. There's a lot of stereotypes. We talk about people that are living in poverty or people that have criminal backgrounds. The assumption is that they aren't good workers, they are not reliable, and their retention is relatively low. But that's not our experience. I think that it may be the case that if you have an organization or a company that doesn't do the appropriate training, your turnover may be really high. Or if you're not making these individuals feel welcome or appreciated, your turnover may be pretty high. But we would find that to be high, those numbers to be high for any group that doesn't feel like they're part of the organization, or if they don't feel they have a career path, or that their job is a dead-end job. We don't want anybody at Cascade Engineering to feel that way. We want them to know, not just feel, but to know that they're respected and that they'll be treated with dignity and respect.
Talk about the semantics of welfare to career versus welfare to job.
Yeah, and so that's part of our evolution, is that in the beginning we were talking about providing people jobs. That's what we thought it meant. But we found that when we switched some of our thinking about creating long-term employment opportunities for these individuals, that it was about creating careers. It was about, staying employed. It was about being able to afford to send your kids to college. It was about making sure that you had the money in your account to pay your rent and take care of your family. And our goal is that eventually our people on the Welfare to Career program are get off welfare. And that can be a scary thought sometimes, because you may have become dependent on the state, and that the concept of having some the ability not to receive these funds can be scary. But with the support of the company and the support of the social worker that is here, people have been successful at doing that, and over time you begin to make more money than you would if you had chosen to keep a low-paying job and stay on welfare. So we're pretty excited about that opportunity for individuals to experience.
How do you talk a little bit more about the support that you offer? So say it's day one, you know someone potentially has a criminal background, or potentially it's a welfare to work participant. But how do you, on day one, what are some of the early pieces of support that you offer to make sure that they feel welcome and part of the larger community there?
So a couple of things that happen before a person gets here. We do continuous training for our leadership, talking about economic differences between people, racial differences between people, gender differences between people, just so they understand that you can't treat everybody the same way, and understanding that people's backgrounds and experience may shape their behaviors, and how we need to communicate with those individuals. Also, when the employee gets here, they get 20 plus hours of training, and we go through diversity training, we go through expectations, we go through all of our systems, because you want to make sure that they are prepared for a career at Cascade in engineering. We also have an anti-racism statement where we talk about understanding the impact that race has in our community, and that we encourage open and free dialogue about issues of race. We want to be in a place that people feel safe to talk. I often joke that I spend more time with my colleagues than I do with my own family, and I want to be in a situation where I can talk about things that are important to me. And for me, one of the things that's important to me as an African American man is are issues of race. For other people, it might be issues of sex. It could be NASCAR. It could be a billion different things. But we want to have an environment where you feel close and open with your friends to discuss these matters. And so I think that's very important about creating a culture where people feel safe.
I love this, the anti-racism trainings. How did that program come about, and what's sort of the content that you help train your folks on?
Yeah, it actually came about, and this is another Fred story, where we have something here in Grand Rapids called the Institute of Healing Racism, and I think they have those throughout the country, where Fred went to this training because he was interested in what kind of impact his business could have, and he was exposed to issues of race that he never had thought about as a white man. And it gave him a better understanding of some of the difficulties people of color have in this community. And so one of the things that we do as an organization is that if you're a leader, meaning that you have direct reports, we require you to do a couple of things. The first thing we require you to do is to go to the Institute of Healing Racism. And that is typically a 2-day course where you do some role playing and you learn about different aspects of being a person of color, and you learn hopefully to expand your understanding horizon about issues of race. The second thing we do is that all of our leaders have to go through a diversity theater, and this is a program that we've created where we take incidents that actually occurred at Cascade Engineering and we sort of role play them out. And then we, together with the audience, we discuss how this can be done better and different. And the key thing about this is that, these are things that actually happened at Cascade. So we're clear to say that we're not a perfect organization. We're clear to say that we don't have incidents of racism here. We do. But our goal is to learn from these situations, to make them teaching opportunities, and hopefully have fewer and fewer every year. About 5 years ago, we created an anti-racism statement, and that's the first one we've seen in the United States from a manufacturer, where we talk about identifying issues of race and discussing issues of race. And once again, in that statement, we say, hey, we're not perfect, but if we see a situation, we want to feel comfortable enough with our employees to discuss it. One of the things that we did last year was that, for example, when the incidents in Ferguson were going on, so we had a lot of people talking about, what happened in Ferguson and the shooting of African American men. And so one of the questions was that, could Ferguson happen in Grand Rapids, Michigan? And we brought a diverse group of people together, and we actually talked about it. And it was sort of interesting that half the room was saying, Ferguson can never happen in Grand Rapids because we're just so different. And the other half the room was saying, it could happen tonight because, there are difficult situations in Grand Rapids. And the purpose of the conversation is not to prove anybody right or wrong, but it's to increase your overall understanding. So both sides walked away with a better understanding of how that other group felt. And so that's what we call it, dialogues. We had a dialogue where I walked away with a better understanding of my friends, safe environment, so people were able to say some things that were difficult, and we were able to work through them. It's sort of funny that when dealing with issues of race, there's often not a place where a person can go. We're still a very segregated community, so when you go home, often you go home to people of your own race. When you go to church, you often go to churches of your own race. But at Cascade Engineering, when you go to work, that's probably one of the most diverse places that you spend time at. And so this is a great opportunity for us to celebrate some of that diversity and have some good conversations about race, and you're able to ask some questions that you've never been able to ask before. I've had people come into my office and say, "Hey, Kenyatta," close the door and say, "Let me ask you this." And sometimes it's the craziest question I've ever heard.
Right.
But they had a question, and they've never had an opportunity to ask that. And so from that conversation, I grow and they grow, and now we have a better understanding. And I think often in our communities, because we're not able to have those conversations, discussions of race and other issues stay stagnant. Because in order for a conversation to move forward, you have to have conversation, and that's not always the case.
And I really like this idea of having folks reenact situations that happened at Cascade. Is that hard sometimes to have people directly address real situations?
Yeah, and sometimes it's difficult. But if you don't address difficult issues you're never going to learn, right? And so we purposely put ourselves in awkward situations so that we can advance our overall understanding. And so when something does happen, they feel that they can talk about it with their supervisor. The worst thing you can have is something happens to somebody and they just they turtle and they just go into their shell and don't ever tell anybody, and the situation gets worse and worse. If I when you start working here, I give you a situation and say, this is some of the things that we've done here. We became aware of them and we address them. Hopefully, that again creates an environment where people think that our conversations are safe and you can talk about these things because the president talks about it, the CEO talks about it, the EVP talks about it. When we get together at our town hall meetings, we bring our employees together. We talk about these issues. And so if we talk about it in front of everybody, it should be, hopefully they feel safe that they can talk about it as well.
So in terms of the caseworker on site, is that someone provided by the state of Michigan, or is that someone that you've hired privately, or how does that work out?
Yeah, so Joyce Kenyattas March, she actually works for the state, so she works for the Department of Health and Human Services, and she has an office here. And for example, you talked about when people first get here in day one. If you are one of her clients and you miss work, we've got a system set up so Joyce can see the attendance. And suppose I was a client, she called me and said, "Hey, Kenyatta, why weren't you at work today? You received a point." And I can tell her that I had a transportation issue, or I had a childcare issue, or I had a billion different issues that could have prevented me from coming to work. And she can try to help me resolve those problems as quickly as possible. The most common reason people get separated from work is because of attendance. Right. And so when you're coming out of generational poverty, there's sometimes you don't have the resources that people who grew up middle class or wealthy actually had. So for example, I've got a car. If my car doesn't start, I go to my other car. Right. I've got a wife that can drop me off at work. I've got 10 friends that can take me where I need to go. If you're living in an economically different environment, you may not have those options. So having Joyce be able to be that immediate resource for these employees has been one of the great successes of this program.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to think if other companies could figure out a way to get more involved. Is Cascade involved in California, for example, or have you had any companies from California talk about a similar setup to what you guys have?
You know what? We've talked to other communities, no one in California thus far, but there are groups that come together. For example, in Western Michigan, we have a group called The Source, and now we sort of share a social worker. And in addition to that, we found that because Joyce has been so successful at dealing with people that are coming out of poverty, we've actually added another social worker that deals with that next group of individuals who don't receive welfare, but still, may need some help from a social worker. And so she actually works. So that's another situation where we found something that worked and we began to expand the program.
Great. And just for folks who may be interested in learning more about this in particular, are there any in-depth case studies, or do you internally have a step-by-step playbook or checklist or things that other companies could learn from your experience with the welfare to career or hiring chronically underemployed populations?
Yeah, so we do have some case studies on it, and we can probably place those on our website so people can get access to us. But one thing I want to be careful with is that this is not something that's really sort of cookie cutter. And so you have to do a deep dive on your culture and where you are. And so sometimes I get calls from people that say, "Hey, we want to do what you're doing, and just tell me what we have to do." And it's really very introspective. It's understanding, and people forget that this has been 20 plus years for us in the making. So we're really successful now, but we've had a lot of bumps along the way, and because we're able to work through those bumps, we've got a program that's really, I think, is hitting out of the park at this point in time. But as far as, for example, with reentry, I think the first step for companies is looking at their policy and making sure that they're giving people opportunities. And so what we're saying is that not that you must actually even hire people with criminal backgrounds. What we're saying is that the first step is not to automatically exclude them. And that's what a lot of companies do these days. And so it's about opening your eyes and giving people an opportunity that you may not have given them otherwise. I'd ask yourself, what hard facts do I have to prove that this group should be excluded rather than innuendo and stereotypes and myths. And so what I've learned as being at Cascade Engineering and just my life as an executive is that a lot of things that I thought were true aren't necessarily true when I look at the facts.
And just moving the box seems like such an easy answer. That's such a great takeaway for so many businesses, I think.
Yeah, and it's relatively simple. And in this scenario, once you get rid of the fear, people fear that if a person with a criminal background does anything in my organization, I'm responsible. That's not the case.
Yeah. So, looking forward, is Cascade Engineering planning to grow and expand? What new markets are you looking to get into? What's sort of the plans of the company over the next few years?
Yeah, we are about $400 million in sales, and we wish to continue grow. Our sweet spot is still plastic injection molded parts, but we're looking for different markets, the way to expand our footprint, and also we're looking to expand geographically. We're a Midwest company. We're trying to expand our sales south and west. So we're pretty excited about those potential opportunities.
Great, and it sounds like some global stuff as well, right?
Yeah. So, for example, in our container division and our Decade, which does pallets and bins, we sell all over the world. And our company in Budapest, they're doing extremely well, and they're covering much of Europe and heading into Asia. So we're excited about our global footprint.
And this may be more of a question for Fred or the sort of board of directors, but what's the 25, 50, or 100-year plan? I one thing that stuck out to me in Fred Keller's TED Talk was, some institutions are working on problems that aren't necessarily going to be around. For example, like, are cars or injected mold plastics going to be the future of Cascade, or are some of these other business units that you're starting to look into, are these sort of the future of Cascade Engineering?
Yeah, so one of our first goals is to remain a family-owned company in the future. So we're excited about that. We've got Generation 2 that's coming into the business. I think right now we're addressing on, what solutions do we want to solve? And right now we believe that, being involved in plastic injection molding is still part of those solutions. But for the future, what? We're not sure. We might be in plastic. We might be in something else. We want to keep our options open and continue to grow. As there might be a technology that obsoletes what we do. We have to be aware of that and have other options. So that's why we like being diversified, in the sense that we've got 9 different businesses and we're in 9 different industries. And we have a very talented group of employees and executives here, and we're looking for the next best thing.
And so for you personally, Kenyatta, what are you most excited about in your work?
I think what excites me the most is that when I tell people I work for Cascade Engineering, they say, what? I've heard good things about your company. Often they don't know exactly what we make, but they know that we are socially responsible and that we have we want to have a positive impact on the planet. And so one of my great joys is developing people. That's the HR part of my career, and continuing to make sure that we as a community have the talent that so that we can run our 40 our businesses. We won't have the talent to grow our businesses.
Great. And who are you watching? Who are you inspired by?
Who am I? You know what? I'm inspired by a lot of people, starting with my family, my mother, my father. They've come from, talk about generational poverty. They grew up in poverty that I've never experienced, yet they were able to raise me with high expectations and put me through college and make me the man that I am today. Through friends connections, we've got to know Patagonia. And so actually this week I was trading some policies with them, looking at family leave and looking at adoption policies and military leave policies, and knowing that there are other companies out there that want to have similar positive impacts on their communities as well sort of inspires us to do more. And that's one great thing about being a certified B Corp is that now there's a list of other people that we know that have common goals, and we speak the common language, and so we can sort of grow together. And that's been a great benefit for us.
That's fantastic that you've been talking to Patagonia about family leave policies and those other things. It's just a great example of, I'm not sure if both of you weren't certified B Corps, it might not happen, that connection.
You know what? We wouldn't have had the connection. It was sort of cool that I sent an email out there and boom, they responded to me overnight because they knew who we are, they knew who we were, and they know that this wasn't a fishing expedition, that we were trying to have a positive impact like they are. And so they've been very responsive. And we try to be responsive to other B Corps that call us as well. We spend a lot of time explaining to people what the process is and what the impacts it's had on us as an organization, because we want to grow the number of B Corps and certified B Corps, particularly in Western Michigan. Our goal is to have a cluster of these companies in Grand Rapids because we believe that will help us remain a vibrant energy. I think particularly millennials, people always talk about millennials and the next generation, that they want to work for a company that espouses the things that B Corps talk about. They want to know that the company cares about its people and cares about the environment. They want to work for a company that has some sort of work-life balance. And those are the things that the B corporations and triple byline companies strive to do and to be.
Great. Well, where can folks learn more about Cascade Engineering and the great work that you're doing?
Well, I start off with our website, which is cascadeengineering.com. And I'm going to there. And if, for example, if you go to our career page, you can see our policies on reentry. You can see our page on 32.2. And there we'll also place some of the research on the Welfare to Career program and probably even my testimony to Congress.
Next Economy Now is a production of Lift Economy. To listen to all of our episodes, go to lifteconomy.com/podcast. That's LIFT economy.com/podcast. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletter at lifteconomy.com/newsletter. Please also rate and review our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.